Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening whenever you're watching this. It is almost spring here in Seattle. I see I've already got some viewers joining me in the chat, which is fantastic. I will definitely try to keep an eye on that as I talk about spring games. So these are games that are all having to do with spring. In case you don't know, or I forgot to say, I'm Amanda from Blue Highway Games, and every Friday I run through about 5 different games that have a connection to a certain theme, and then all week in store those 5 games will be at 20% off, and you can get them in store, curbside pickup, and we're still doing our normal online delivery options. So normally I do try to have a very young kids game. I didn't manage to get one, even though there were a few that I'd sort of already done in other categories. So I just decided to go with more family-friendly games across the board. So a lot of these can't go real young, but they're definitely great options for kind of families all ages or just groups of adults. And I did find some solo gaming in here as well. For those of you who follow for that, because that's the type of gaming I'm certainly into right now. The first game I want to talk about is probably the loosest connection to spring, and it is called Honshu. Now, the cover and the backs of the cards are probably the closest relation to spring that this game has, but that's fine. Art and theme counts for something, so we've got some great little cherry blossoms here on the cover of this card game. And this is probably 3 or 4 years old now, and it's a little trick-taking game about building up your land in Japan, I guess on the island of Honshu. And so, like a bidding game. It's a bidding game. Well, I guess trick-taking games are bidding games. Yes, so you have cards that have numbers on them, as well as all of the characteristics of the card. On the start of each round, everybody's going to be playing down a card into the table, taking turns, so you're trying to have a higher value card than someone else so that you'll be able to choose which card you want to place in your play area first. Now, if I have a 13, that's probably a pretty low number. If I've already garnered some resources from some of my other cards, which are the cubes, I can add a resource to a card to up the value of it by 60. But anyone else is able to do that as well if they have resources. So you're trying to play down cards to get a high number with or without a cube in order to then, after everybody's played down the cards, have your first pick of the ones that have been played. So it's also possible that you know that you have a card that would only really work in the area that you're building up and trying to score points from, so someone might not want this card, so you might not need to put a little cube on it because you know that you would be able to get that card later in the round anyway. But as you grab your card, then you're going to add it to your play area, and it has to overlap another played card by at least 1 square. And at the end of the game, you're going to assess points from your big area of overlapping cards to figure out how many points you score. Having a city is great because you'll get a point for every square in that city. However, you only score points from your, I think it's your smallest city. Man, it's been a while since I played this. You're gonna grab, so you don't want to necessarily have a lot of different little cities. You want to have sort of one big city or 2 kind of evenly sized cities that you're both working on at different parts. Forests, which are a little bit more rare on all the cards, if you can leave them uncovered and not cover them up trying to build up your city, those are going to score you a couple points. And then for all these little squares, when you first play down a card, you might get a production cube to go on it. And at the end of the game, if you can supply a matching factory with the same color cube, you'll score those little flower points that you see next to it. So I will want to have had a gray cube somewhere that I didn't spend to bump up one of my point value cards. So you're going to drop that there on the factory at the end of the game, and there's a variety of points. Like this one's going to have 3 points for having a brown cube at the end of the game, and so on and so forth. And I believe lakes also score points. You cannot cover up a lake, so if you have them, they're going to be a little bit trickier to work around, but they can score you some points. And the little yellow fields are just sort of fallow fields. I mean, the fallow, sure, they have lots of living creatures on those fields, voles and gophers and insects. So that is Honshu. Again, very loosely connected to spring, though the backs of the cards are quite lovely to look at with this little picture of Mount Fuji, and some Sakura flowers there in the background. And that is normally $24.99, but it is on sale for 20% off. And I am totally blanking on how many people this plays with. 2 to 5. I knew it wasn't solo because I didn't try it last night, but again, but 2 to 5 players, and I have played it with 2 a few times a while ago, and it was fun over our lunchtime games. All right, the next one I have is also a card game, also set in Japan, also featuring these beautiful flowers, the Sakura cherry blossom flowers, and I hope that's right. I'm having a week of my brain has just ceased to function, and so it's a much smaller box. This game we imported originally, so our library copy is in German. Now the game is out in English in the States from Pandasaurus Games. Our library copy is not, but the cards themselves don't have any text on them. They're just numbers and colors: gray, blue, green, and pink. And so your object is, when you have your turn, you're going to have a hand of cards. You're going to have to choose 2 cards to play down that round. And then there's some drafting element that happens where you're passing cards to another person. But you're going to choose where to play the cards. You're only allowed to have 3 stacks of cards, and the numbers have to go in numerical order. They don't have to be concurrent, so they don't have to be exactly the next number. So this would work because 49 is lower than 94. But then if I come along with 44, I'm going to be able to place that below the 49, because that's where it would go numerically, or in a new stack if I wanted to. But if I'm forced to play this 3 and I don't have a really good place to put it, I can jump all the way down here. But as you'll start to see, there's not many numbers lower than 3. So this stack, I would have to be thinking only above numbers 94, because anything in between 94 and 3, I'm not gonna be able to place in this stack, because that would mean inserting it into the middle, which is not allowed. So I have 3 stacks. I am allowed to put things, there are numbers bigger than 93, so let's say I got number 116, I'd be able to tuck that in behind the 94 because it's at the top of the numerical chain, but I couldn't put anything in the middle. And I've got 3 piles to work on. You're going to be placing down lots of cards, so you're sort of having to figure out how far you're willing to make a jump and possibly what cards might come your way. But what makes it interesting is that you don't just score once at the end of the game. You're going to have 3 scoring rounds, and this is a scoring example from some of our lunchtime games in store. I've noted on here that I did not win any of these games. This was well over a year ago now. But you're going to score once for blue, and then all of your blue cards, though they're only worth 3 points, are going to score again in the second and the third round. But you don't start scoring green until the second round, but they're going to be worth more points, but they're also going to score in the third round. Gray, you may have been collecting since the beginning, but they haven't been scoring you points until that third scoring round, but they are worth 7 points. And then at the very end of the game, the pink ones are going to score based on how many that you have, not kind of a multiplication of the number that you have each round, but having like 5 of them will get you 15 points. If you get lots and lots of pink cards, you'd get 120 points, which highest score on pink there was 45. So somebody collected 9 of them, which is pretty good. So that is Ohanami. Let's check out the questions for that in the chat. Do you have your own piles, or everyone working on the same piles? You have your own 3 piles. So the cards that you're collecting, you're going to be placing on any one of your 3 piles. And my friend Rebecca is going to be placing her cards down on her own 3 piles. So the only thing that's shared is the cards themselves in the play of the game and the hand that you are dealt. But there is no solo variant on this that I'm aware of, so maybe I missed out. Yeah, it says 2 to 4, ages 8+, and it's just a nice, cute little card game from Pandasaurus. It's only $14.95 normally, and it will be 20% off all week. And we have, I think, quite a few of these stocked up in store because it's a good one. Yeah, you're not really sabotaging other people. The cards that you're selecting, I mean, I guess I could be like, oh, I'm gonna take that card, but you're more concerned with being able to maintain your 3 piles and be able to play higher and lower on each of them without getting yourself stuck and not being able to play down cards, which means you won't get any points. So, yeah, that is Oh Hanami. The next one I have is I'm going to jump up into one of my big box games, and it's not a type of flower that is maybe normally associated with spring, but it is Succulent, which is a bigger box game from Renegade Games, designed by Alex Kevern. I want to say Irvin because that's my last name, but that is not his name. And it's about planting fields and little flower patches of succulents. So the game itself starts out with kind of a little tiny area. There's 3 of these out in the center of the table. This will be a shared play area, not for your own self, but they will be out in the middle of the table, and each color represents a certain type of cutting from a succulent that you can trim off if you're able to place one of your flower patches over top of the colors that you need. So here I would be getting a purple and an orange cutting. So I would take those from the central market, and then I'm going to claim this flower patch as my own with my color, which these are fun little components, which I don't know if you can see, but it's double layered cardboard, so they're not going to slide around. You won't lose which flower patch belongs to you. And once I have my trimmings and I've claimed my flower patch, then I look at all the trimmings and cuttings that I've collected over several rounds, and if I have enough, I'm able to then purchase some cards. The cards themselves have the value of the flowers on the top. So if I want this card worth 4 points, I'm going to need 2 oranges and a red. And I would just put those back into the market in the central supply, and I would claim this card, and I would get 4 points at the end of the game. This card has a little bonus. It also gives me a blue cutting, or that's purple, a cutting back for just claiming that card. The flower patches themselves, they also have to be collected. You don't just have an unlimited supply of these square flower patches of different sizes. You have to actually collect those. Now these cards that you are trying to aim for, they're out in kind of a row, so you can see what you want to be working on, which cuttings you need to be collecting. But also at the bottom of the card, there's a space for you to place a worker and to claim those shapes. So I would, instead of putting out a flower patch and taking some cuttings and being able to purchase a card, I might put out my little worker, which maybe I'm the water bottle, or maybe I'm the little garden rake here, and I would place it out on one of those cards that's out in the center of the table, and then I would take a single square garden patch and a triple garden patch into my supply. Now it's also really good to have your worker out on one of the cards, because if my friend comes along and decides to buy this with the 2 oranges and a red, I'm going to get my little worker back. They're going to take the card, but as compensation, I'm going to get a large water drop versus the little water drop. So see if you can see the comparison of sizes. One is little, one is big, one's dark blue, one is light blue. And these are going to go onto my personal little greenhouse here. Now the little blue ones are collected in a variety of ways based on how things are getting placed out into the center board, and when you take them, they're going to fill up spaces, and when you have a completely filled area, you're going to be able to use all of them in exchange for a certain color cutting if you need, when you need to claim one of those cards. The big water drops are special because they will go out on the board. They might score you some points at the end of the game, that little 2 there, and they also don't need to get removed along with the little ones when you are trying to use it as a wild. So they're harder to get because you have to be on the card when somebody claims it, including yourself. And they are going to kind of fill in a permanent spot on your own personal greenhouse board. So everybody has one of these. These are out in the center for everybody to work on. And at the end of that, you're going to have a whole center area that's just full of these cute little succulent plants that you've planted. And these themselves are actually really, really cute and pretty with all the little different green plants. Alright, so that is Succulent. It is from Renegade Games. It's normally $44.95, but it will be 20% off this week. It has a solo variant, actually. I did not try it. Now that oh my goodness, my brain is just done for today, but I'm 99.9% sure that it's a solo variant. Maybe not. Let me just look at the bottom of the box. Perhaps it'll tell me. It's so exciting. No, it says 2 to 4, so I'm clearly just needing a weekend. But I did play it 2 players last night for the first time, and I was very pleasantly surprised by how well it played with 2. I imagine with 3 or 4, the marketplace is going to be a lot more of a harder contest to kind of go and get the cards that you want, because even if you're collecting the green, purple Succulent cuttings, someone might take the green, purple card before you have a chance to get there. So having those wilds on your greenhouse board are going to be more important. With 2, it felt a little bit more like a less tense experience, but a bit more of a race, trying to keep pace with each other, plant as many flowers in order to get those endgame scoring points from the cards. All right, moving on to kind of an older but great game that I almost featured last week because it's by Uwe Rosenberg, and it is called Cottage Garden. And if you like the look of Patchwork, or you have played Patchwork, one of his most popular 2-player games, this is a wonderful game that does in fact play 1 to 4 players, and it uses the same polyominoes that Patchwork did. And so you are going to have different shapes available to you, and they are these wonderful little flower garden, very colorful, not always spring flowers, but it's a garden. It goes throughout the summer. And instead of having kind of a circle like you do in Patchwork where you're trying to claim these, there is a central board where each of these pieces is going to be filling up one of these squares, and they don't quite fit, but that's all right. They all fit on the board, and on your turn you're going to be able to take something from a row or column. When you take the tile itself, then you're going to be moving it onto your own personal board, which I dropped on the ground. Get another one out here, and it has some flower pots and some, I looked up the word before this, and it's the thing in your garden. It's like little glass things that you put over like little, I don't know, starts with a C. It'll come to me about 5 minutes after I finish the stream. But you are trying not to cover them up on your board. You want to only cover up the empty spaces if you can help it, because you're going to be able to move forward your scoring markers based on how many of these things are visible once your little section is completely covered by these flower tiles. And then as you move up your little singular player board, where these are going to be underneath, you're going to be able to transfer those into points at the end of the game. Now you have 2 of these that you're working on at any time, so you're able to fill up. When one is filled, you're actually going to return these to the marketplace, where before they go back out onto that center board, they kind of get entered in this little waiting line. And then you're going to get a new fresh square, and you'll be able to begin again. So you're kind of constantly trying to fill up these little squares to be able to transfer those into points from the pots and the little glass things that are going to move you forward on your board to cloche. Yes, that's the word. Thank you, chat. I knew I had you around for a reason. So that is Cottage Garden. It's definitely the same very satisfying Tetris-like polyomino placement on your own player board, but the movement of where you're able to take the pieces from, you can sort of have some advanced notice of what might be available, and you have to figure out maybe what your opponent will take as the gardener moves around the garden, changing which rows are available to you. So that is been out for a few years now, and I would say it's the best of his 3. There's Indian Summer and Spring Meadow, which I could have also featured, but I really like Cottage Garden. Of the three that use the polyomino pieces from Uwe Rosenberg, it's sort of like a trilogy, and it takes it up from the 2-player only of Patchwork into a 1 to 4 player experience. And these little flower tiles are just so pretty when they're all out on your table. The box itself being gray, not my favorite, but it doesn't matter. When it's out on your table, it's still really spring-like and full of flowers. Okay, and it also has this very wonderful little wheelbarrow that serves very little purpose other than to indicate the start of that waiting line that you place tiles in, but it's really cute. Okay, moving on. I have one more game for you, and this is the one I was most excited about because it's a newer game, one I hadn't played until very recently, and I've only played it solo. So it is not just a solo game, it's a 1 to 5 player game, and it is called Village Green. And this is about taking on the role of being in charge of the village's garden festival. And on the back of the box it says it's the first day of spring. And there's only one thing on everyone's mind, the Village Green of the Year competition. So while it is peaceful and full of flowers, it's a little bit cutthroat. Even for a solo experience, it felt tense. So it's not quite such a pretty floral arrangement. I'm going to switch over to my camera, though I will admit it's maybe not... It's the one I'm most excited about, so I put it out on the camera, but it's not necessarily the most photogenic. And I maybe should have thought about that a little bit more here this morning. But it is another card game, and there are going to be cards that tell you how you can score points, and there's going to be cards that you're going to fill up your decorative village garden. In the end of the game, you are going to have a 4x4 grid of cards going 4 across and 4 down that are hopefully all filled. But there are restrictions onto how you can fill up the area beneath your scoring award cards. So on your turn, you're going to look at your hand of cards, and you're going to have a choice. You can either choose to add another award card. Maybe you see one of these up here that you're like, I think I'll be able to get a row of purple, I don't know what those are, violets. And that symbol that you see on this card is corresponding to hopefully a card that you have in your hand. So I would not want this because I do not have that symbol in my hand. But if I did see a card up here that I wanted, I would be able to take that card, and then you're going to have the ability to score rows as well as columns. So at the end of the game, my new card would score all the cards that are in this row, so these 3. They also, not only is this card going to score for this one, but it's also going to score for this one because it's in this column. So each of these cards are going to score for the column of 3 cards that are underneath it. So they're not going to score you for your whole tableau of 9 colorful green cards. They're only going to score by column and by row. You start out the game with the ones in your column, but not the one in your row. So at this start of the game, my options are to do that and place this, or I can take a green card and add it into my hand and then play 1 down. Now in the solo game, you have to play 1 down. That's what creates the tension. You're not given the choice. I have to choose one of these, look at my hand, and play one of these somewhere in that tableau of cards, and then it's stuck there for the rest of the game. In the 2 to 5 player version, you can take a card, put it in your hand, and then decide you want to discard one of these cards to the bottom of the deck, instead not forcing you to place something down. So I'm sure the tension in a 2 to 5 player games comes from maybe the ones that are available or hoping to get the right award that you need instead of being forced to play down your cards. The cards themselves have some restrictions when you play them. The first ones you play can kind of be anything or anywhere. But once a card has been played down, anything that is directly adjacent to it, orthogonally, that's the opposite of diagonally, so anything that is above, to the sides, or below, has to match either the same color of flower or the same type of flower. Now, my biggest complaint with this game is I can't hardly see the yellow shapes. So, while this red is very obvious what shape it is and that it is red, this one, not so much. It's a little rose. So, maybe I need better lighting in my room. So, when I have this, I'm going to play down my yellow card. In the future, I would have to play down a yellow card or a rose card of a different color. And so it gets harder and harder to place the cards that you want to try to match the awards that you're trying to score. A game ends when somebody has all 9 colored cards and award cards down, their entire tableau is full, or either of these decks run out. When you're playing with 2, 3, or 4 players, a lot of these cards are removed. Solo and 5 player, the cards aren't removed. You're sort of just dealing with what you're dealt and having to kind of go from there. So the solo, I found it quite a fun little puzzle to try to figure out what needs to go where. There are a few things that allow you to break some rules. Everybody has their own little village card. I chose Welcome to Middle Didsbrook, or maybe I could have been the little quaint village of Market Foxby. And you will score a point if you haven't used this card, but if you do use this card and flip it over during the game, you can either scrub one of these rows, or you can choose to play a card on top of another card that is in your play area. Now in the solo game, you can't do that. At the bottom of your card, there's going to be different features that are relating to the different ways of scoring. So there's some trees, different types of trees, a little structure there, and a little patch of grass. Grass can kind of go anywhere in your garden. It doesn't have to match specific colors. But the structure is on a red one, so we'd need to go near a red one or that type of flower. When you have a structure down, then you have to take one of the awards cards, and then you can cover up something that was dealt to you earlier in the game if you didn't like the things that you were initially dealt, or down the side. The trick being, you have to do it. So even if you like all of your scoring things and you've already been working towards that, you might need to come up with a backup plan. The scoring can affect anything from the trees to the grass to the structures to the specific types of flowers, and so on and so forth. So how you place those down on the table really just depends on what's available to you and what hands you have. But I really enjoyed it as a solo game. It took 10 minutes to play, and I wanted to play again right away. So that was the one I'm most excited about. It's called Village Green. It's normally only $21, but it will be 20% off all week. And yes, it looks like there's a lot of thinking involved in this game, says the chat. Yes. It definitely meant being like, oh, if I play this there, I get that there, but then I don't get this here. And so yes, let's see if I missed any other questions in the chat. Do you have your own piles, or is everyone working on the same pile? Oh, that's from earlier. Not a lot of questions. So and thank you for a couple people that are complimenting me. I'm so glad to have people starting to join me in the chat and ask questions. It started out a bit slow, but the last few weeks it's been really nice. And we also get some people mentioning that they did watch it later on YouTube, so thank you to anyone who is joining us from there. Well, that is all the wonderful spring things I have for you today. Hopefully we get some patches of sun amidst the spring showers in Seattle here this weekend and over the next month or so. And thank you all for joining me, and hope you have a wonderful weekend.